In this video, I'm going to show you how to standardize symbology across different layers. Layers that have the same geometry, here Townsend, Massachusetts, but are going to be represented or are going to be used to represent different variables. So in the latest exercise, we're looking at population by town in 3 different years. Going into the properties of MA towns, go to the symbology tab, and then for quantities, going to go to graduated colors, and the value will be one of these populations. So I'll just pick the first, 1980. Looks like that. And the default way that Arc is picking the threshold values between categories in this choropleth is using a method called natural breaks. And that's a method that balances the kind of prerogative to place different features in each category, to describe the relationship between outlier values and more common values, I guess, closer to the mean. Here we see the city of Boston, the darker maroon color, kind of far more people there than in any of the other towns. Other towns with decently sized populations include Worcester, here with about 200,000 people, Springfield, maybe 150,000, various towns around with maybe 100,000, Lowell, Brockton, let me see if I can remember these, Fall River and New Bedford. And then the rest are just some rural towns out in the west, suburbs in the ring around Boston, and to a lesser extent around the smaller cities. So this is population in 1980. Now the assignment asks you to make different maps for population in 1990 and 2000. An easy way to do that is just to copy and paste in 2 other layers. And right now, what was pasted is an exact copy, 1980 population. Now, if I go into the second one, into the properties there, and I change the variable used to 1990, we've still got 5 categories, the same color scheme, but you can notice that the thresholds are different. So in 1980, the least populated town had only 58 people. In 1990, that's 98. And we know it's 1990 because the variable name is right here under the layer name. We'll do that for the 3rd layer as well, 2000. Looks like town lost a few people to 86. You can also trace by the maximum from 570, 574, 588. Now if we want to use the same color scheme, there are a couple ways to do that. Assuming we want to keep the 1980, which you might not want to, but assuming, we'll go into the 1990 and 2000 and have to change those. So one way to do it is to click this classify button and change the method to manual. And here you can manually change the break values. So instead of 11,648, we could do 11,403. And I'm taking that number from the threshold value in 1980. So instead of 31.8 thousand, we're going to do 30,198. Changing these the same way. I think I'm getting these right. And if we say OK, you can see that in the legend, these threshold values are the same, but the year, the variable, the field that's being shown is still different. Now if we toggle between those, They look similar. There are a few towns that changed their category. I guess Worcester pushed up above 159,000 between 1980 and 1990. This feature enters the darkest class. But then the biggest change is that Boston drops out. Oop. So when 1980 is not shown, 1990 is shown, we don't see a Boston. And so that is just because when I reset the thresholds, I also reset the maximum. So Boston in 1980, apparently it had 570,719 people, but in 1990 it had more. And so if you do that, and you're going to do it for a few layers, you'll want to manually set this to be higher. Let's just call it 600,000. And now Boston's back. And actually the 600,000 is a nice even number. You know, when I was typing those in manually, I wasn't even sure if I got all the digits right, because they're not round numbers. So what you might want to do, if you're going to manually standardize that, is to go in and manually set values that are round numbers but close to what the natural breaks would give you. So instead of 11,000 something, I'll go 10,000. Instead of 30,000 and change, we'll go just to 30,000. 60,000. 150,000. Okay, so the layer looks essentially the same, but the threshold values are easier to read. Now, I did that for the 1990, but how to apply it to others? There's another way that works a little bit quicker. If you go into Properties, this for the 1980 layer, you can import the symbology. And when you see which layer to import from, they're all named the same. So a step to do before this is actually to change the name, the label name here in the legend before we go to symbology. Import. And now we know which one to pick with the 90 just after. It could be anything, just as long as you can recognize which other layer in the data frame you want to import symbology from. So now in the value field, because I'm working within the properties of the 1980 field, or the layer that shows the 1980 field, I don't want to keep the default 1990. I'm going to change that to 1980. Okay, okay. And now if we look in the legend, the threshold values are the same, but the field remains different. And so now if we toggle, we're confident that all of the differences that we observe are a result of actual change in population and not a result of differences in threshold values between the layers. And I'll do the same for the layer that's showing 2000. I'll import from a MA Towns 90. Could do it from either since they both have the standard now. And I'll change the field this time to pop 2000 because that's what I want the layer to show. And there we go. We get all three in the same data frame. So I'm going to stop this video now. My next video I'm going to show how to depict all three of these years' population in a map.